Welcome to Serial Killers Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Carter. In the quiet Canadian town of St. Catharines, nestled in the heart of the Niagara region, a darkness began to take root in the early 90s. A darkness that would shatter the idyllic image of this small community and send shockwaves across the nation. At the heart of this darkness was a couple, young and seemingly in love. To the outside world, they were ordinary. They held jobs, had friends, enjoyed parties. But beneath this facade of normalcy lurked a sinister reality. The couple was Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, and their story is one of the most disturbing chapters in Canadian criminal history. Karla Homolka, a bright and outgoing woman, was known for her charming personality. She was popular in school and was seen as a good student. But underneath that cheerful exterior, the seeds of a darker side were growing. Homolka met Paul Bernardo in October 1987 at a pet food convention. Bernardo, a charming and handsome man, was immediately smitten by Homolka. They became a couple and soon got engaged. Their relationship was, in many ways, ordinary. They loved, they argued, they made up. But there was another side to it that was far from normal. Bernardo was a manipulative and abusive partner, with a violent streak that grew more pronounced over time. Homolka, for her part, was not just a passive victim. She was an active participant, a willing accomplice in the atrocities that would unfold. The depth of their depravity came to light with the disappearance of two teenage girls from their community. The girls, Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, were abducted, sexually assaulted, and brutally murdered by the couple. The way they carried out these horrific acts, with such brutal efficiency and cold calculation, shocked even seasoned investigators. It was not just the heinousness of their crimes that left a deep scar on the Canadian psyche. It was also the chilling realization that such evil could lurk amidst us, disguised in the cloak of normalcy. The couple's reign of terror came to an end in 1993 when they were arrested. Bernardo was sentenced to life imprisonment, while Homolka, in a controversial plea deal, served just 12 years before being released in 2005. The case raised important questions about the criminal justice system, victim rights, and the public's right to know. It also raised disturbing questions about the nature of evil and how it can hide in plain sight. As we delve deeper into the story of Karla Homolka, we are forced to confront these unsettling truths about human nature and society. We are forced to ask ourselves, how can such darkness exist in the heart of a seemingly normal person? And how can we, as a society, prevent such horrors from happening again? The answers to these questions are not easy, but they are necessary if we are to learn from this tragic chapter in our history. Nestled in the heart of Canada's Niagara region lies the town of St. Catharines, Ontario. With its idyllic vineyards, lush greenery, and picturesque waterfront, it was a town that personified the ideal of small-town living. The 1980s saw a surge of economic development, with new businesses sprouting up and a steady stream of families moving in, drawn by the promise of a safe, quiet community. But beneath the veneer of tranquility, a sinister undercurrent was beginning to take hold. Unbeknownst to the unsuspecting residents, a dark chapter in their town's history was about to unfold. The names Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo would soon become synonymous with terror and revulsion, their heinous acts casting a long, dark shadow over the peaceful town. St. Catharines during the late 80s and early 90s was an era defined by a sense of optimism and prosperity. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War had ushered in a newfound sense of global unity and peace. Pop culture was dominated by upbeat music from artists like Madonna and Michael Jackson, and feel-good movies like Pretty Woman and Home Alone. It was an era of relative innocence, where the horrors of the world seemed far removed from the safety of small-town life. In this context, the community of St. Catharines was largely insulated from the crime and violence that plagued larger cities. The town was a place where neighbors knew each other by name, and children played freely in the streets without fear. It was a place where a horrifying series of events like the ones perpetrated by Homolka and Bernardo seemed entirely unthinkable. Yet, in retrospect, there were signs that all was not well. Even as the community enjoyed its sense of safety and peace, troubling stories began to surface about a series of unsolved sexual assaults in the nearby city of Scarborough. Fear began to percolate quietly within the community, as parents tightened their grip on their children and women began to look over their shoulders, worried that they might be the next victim. Amidst this backdrop of burgeoning fear and innocence lost, Homolka and Bernardo were able to exploit the trust and naivete of their community to commit their atrocious acts. The couple, with their attractive appearances and seemingly normal lives, represented the very essence of the community's ideal. They were the charming, upwardly mobile young couple next door, seemingly embodying the dreams and aspirations of their peers. This facade of normalcy allowed them to hide their sinister intentions, infiltrate their victims' lives, and ultimately commit their horrifying crimes. The story of Karla Homolka is not simply the story of a woman and her heinous acts, but also the story of a town and an era. It is a stark reminder that evil can lurk in the most innocuous of places, and that the facade of normalcy can sometimes hide the darkest of intentions. It is a testament to the fact that no community, no matter how safe or peaceful, is immune to the potential for horror. The first victims to fall prey to Homolka and Bernardo were girls from their own community, unsuspecting neighbors who trusted in the innocence of the couple's friendly demeanor. Among these was Tammy Homolka, Karla's younger sister, who tragically became the couple's first known victim. On the night of December 24, 1990, Tammy was drugged by her sister and Bernardo, and then sexually assaulted as she lay unconscious. The 15-year-old's death later that evening was attributed to an accident, a result of choking on her own vomit after consuming too much alcohol at a Christmas Eve party. The police, unknowing of the sinister events that had unfolded, ruled her death as an accident, and the couple remained undetected. In the following year, several more young women would encounter the same cruel fate. The next was a girl named Leslie Mahaffey. The 14-year-old had been locked out of her house as a punishment for missing her curfew when she chanced upon Bernardo in the early hours of June 15, 1991. Seeing an opportunity, he offered her a cigarette and then forced her into his car. Homolka and Bernardo held Leslie captive in their home, sexually assaulted her, and then killed her. Her dismembered body was later found encased in cement in a nearby lake. Only a few months later, the couple claimed another victim, Kristen French. The 15-year-old was abducted on her way home from school in broad daylight on April 16, 1992. Like Leslie, Kristen was held captive, subjected to sexual assault, and ultimately killed. Her body was found in a ditch on April 30, 1992. The brutal nature of these crimes sent shockwaves through the community of St. Catharines. Parents were gripped with fear, holding their children close. The sense of safety and security that once defined the town was replaced with a pervasive sense of dread. The entire region was on edge as the police scrambled to find the perpetrators of these heinous crimes. Yet, amidst this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, Homolka and Bernardo were able to maintain their facade of normalcy. They continued to live their lives, appearing to all as a respectable, law-abiding young couple. Their ability to blend into the community allowed them to evade suspicion, leaving the true extent of their crimes undiscovered for several more years. As the town mourned its lost daughters, the couple continued to hide in plain sight, their horrifying secret concealed beneath a veneer of respectability. The couple's crimes had escalated from Homolka's younger sister to innocent girls in their community. Each crime was more calculated, more brutal, signaling a chilling disregard for human life. As the body count grew, the police found themselves dealing with a situation beyond their worst nightmares. It wasn't just the sheer brutality that alarmed them, it was the audacity. The victims were abducted in broad daylight, from their own neighborhoods, and their bodies were discarded like refuse. The police were under immense pressure. The public was terrified, demanding answers, demanding justice. The local community, particularly parents, were in a state of perpetual fear, their trust in the safety of the town shattered. The police started working tirelessly, pooling resources, and following every lead, no matter how insignificant it seemed. An intense manhunt for the perpetrators was underway. The authorities began piecing together a profile of the suspect, a task made difficult by the lack of concrete evidence. The perpetrator seemed to know exactly how to evade capture, leaving behind little to no trace. From the victim's age and the manner of their abduction, the police surmised that they were dealing with a predator who was familiar with the area, someone who could blend into the community without raising alarms. Despite their efforts, the trail went cold. The police were left grasping at straws, their leads drying up. The elusive nature of the perpetrator seemed to mock their efforts, adding to the growing frustration and fear. In the meantime, Homolka and Bernardo continued their lives undisturbed. They held jobs, socialized with friends, even got married in an elaborate ceremony that June. To their friends and neighbors, they were just another young couple, deeply in love, starting their life together. The facade of normalcy they maintained was so convincing that no one, not even the police, could connect them to the horrifying crimes that had taken place. However, as the saying goes, the truth has a way of bubbling to the surface. The couple's seemingly perfect life was about to come crashing down, exposing the monstrous reality beneath. A series of events was set into motion that would ultimately lead to their undoing. It began with an unrelated case, a rape investigation that had been ongoing for years in Scarborough, a suburb of Toronto. The suspect was a man known in the media as the Scarborough Rapist. Little did the police know that this case would provide the break they desperately needed in the St. Catharines murders. The threads of the two cases would soon intertwine, unraveling the chilling truth. The net was closing in on Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo. As the investigation into the St. Catharines murders remained at a standstill, the police were making progress on the Scarborough Rapist case. The suspect, later identified as Paul Bernardo, had been linked to a series of brutal sexual assaults in the area. The police had a composite sketch and a list of possible suspects, and Bernardo's name was on that list. The Scarborough Rapist had a specific modus operandi. His victims were usually young women, often teenagers, whom he stalked and brutally assaulted in secluded areas. He was cunning, meticulous, and highly manipulative, traits that allowed him to continue his violent spree undetected for years. Even more disturbing was his apparent need for power and control, evident in the nature of the attacks. This pattern of behavior fit neatly into a type of criminal profile known as a power reassurance rapist. According to criminal profiler John Douglas, they are often socially awkward, with low self-esteem, and commit their crimes to reassure their own masculinity. They are typically methodical and cautious, which explained the suspect's ability to avoid capture for so long. Meanwhile, Bernardo and Homolka continued to live their seemingly ordinary lives. Bernardo held a job as an accountant, and Homolka worked at a veterinary clinic. To the outside world, they were just another suburban couple. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, Bernardo's violent tendencies were escalating, and Homolka, whether out of fear or complicity, was drawn into his dark world. There were still no direct links connecting them to the St. Catharines murders. Yet the parallels were there. Young female victims, the element of stalking, the brutal violence. It was a chilling thought. Could the Scarborough Rapist and the St. Catharines killer be one and the same? Bernardo's name was forwarded to the Niagara Regional Police for further investigation, but due to a series of administrative errors, he was not immediately connected to the St. Catharines murders. Instead, he remained a suspect, one among many, for the Scarborough Rapist case. It was a critical oversight, one that allowed Bernardo and Homolka to continue their reign of terror unchecked. The net was slowly tightening, but the threads connecting Bernardo and Homolka to the horrifying crimes were yet to be fully unraveled. The couple, still seemingly above suspicion, were about to commit their most heinous crime yet, marking a turning point in their murderous spree. The actions that followed would ultimately lead to the unmasking of two of Canada's most infamous killers. In December 1992, the Homolka's worst crime was committed. The victim was Homolka's own younger sister, Tammy. Tammy was drugged and subsequently died from choking on her vomit. The authorities concluded it was an accidental death caused by alcohol poisoning. This tragic event, which at the time seemed unrelated to the ongoing investigations, would later become a critical piece of evidence linking Homolka and Bernardo to the string of crimes. As the couple continued to evade suspicion, the police were making significant strides in the Scarborough rapist case. A breakthrough occurred when a DNA sample collected from one of the rape victims was matched to Bernardo. However, due to a backlog in the system, the results of this test wouldn't be available until 1993. Bernardo, despite being a prime suspect, remained a free man. The delay in processing the DNA evidence was a tragic missed opportunity to prevent further harm. During this period, Bernardo and Homolka were involved in the abduction, rape, and murder of two more young women, Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. The discovery of these bodies, the similar modus operandi, and the now available DNA results finally led the authorities to see the connection between the Scarborough rapist and the St. Catharines murders. The police now had a solid lead: Paul Bernardo. Simultaneously, Homolka's role in the crimes was beginning to surface. The catalyst was a series of videotapes that Homolka had been secretly storing. These tapes, which Homolka later handed over to her attorney, contained graphic footage of the couple sexually assaulting their victims. The presence of Homolka's sister Tammy in one of the videos was a chilling revelation. The discovery of these tapes was a pivotal moment in the investigation. They not only provided undeniable proof of Bernardo's guilt, but also exposed Homolka's active participation in the crimes. Witness testimonies further built the case against Homolka. Several friends and family members recalled Homolka's unusual behavior around the time of the crimes, including her unexplained absences and changes in demeanor. Homolka's sister Lori testified that Karla had confessed to her about drugging Tammy. The mounting forensic evidence, coupled with the damning videotapes and witness testimonies, finally led to the arrest and indictment of both Homolka and Bernardo. The once seemingly ordinary couple was unmasked as two of the most chilling serial killers in Canadian history. The investigation had been fraught with missteps and missed opportunities, but the relentless pursuit of justice had finally borne fruit. The authorities had their culprits. The Scarborough rapist and his accomplice were finally behind bars. The horrific chapter in the history of St. Catharines was coming to a close, but the trial was just beginning. The couple's arrest marked the end of their reign of terror, but it also marked the beginning of a new phase in the story: the pursuit of justice. The trial of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka was one of the most highly publicized in Canadian history. The public was captivated and horrified by the details of the gruesome crimes, and the media was rife with sensational headlines. The atmosphere in and around the courtroom was tense, as the nation awaited justice for the victims. The trial proceedings began in 1993. Bernardo was charged with the first-degree murders of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, while Homolka was charged with manslaughter for her role in the crimes. Bernardo pleaded not guilty, while Homolka struck a controversial plea deal with the prosecution. In exchange for her full cooperation and testimony against Bernardo, Homolka's charges were reduced to 2 counts of manslaughter. This would later be referred to as the deal with the devil. In the courtroom, the gruesome videotapes were played, exposing the horrific details of the crimes to the jury and the public. The images of the victims, helpless and terrified, shocked the nation. Bernardo, seemingly emotionless, showed no signs of remorse, while Homolka presented herself as a victim, claiming she had been coerced and abused by Bernardo. Homolka's testimony was critical in the prosecution's case against Bernardo. She claimed that she had been forced to participate in the rapes and murders under fear of violence from Bernardo. Her portrayal of herself as a victim of domestic abuse was convincing to some, but many remained skeptical of her claims. The public reaction was one of shock and outrage. The horrific nature of the crimes and the seemingly cold-blooded demeanor of the perpetrators were deeply unsettling. There was widespread criticism of the plea deal offered to Homolka, with many feeling that it was too lenient given her active role in the crimes. Protests and petitions calling for a review of the deal were organized, but to no avail. The trial lasted for 4 months, and in September 1995, Bernardo was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Homolka, under the terms of her plea deal, served only 12 years before being released in 2005. The arrest and trial of Bernardo and Homolka marked an end to one of the most chilling chapters in Canadian criminal history. Yet even after the verdict, questions remained about Homolka's role in the crimes and the controversial plea deal she was offered. The case served as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the veneer of normality, sending shockwaves through the nation that continue to resonate to this day. To truly understand the nature of Karla Homolka's involvement in these crimes, one must look beyond the courtroom and into her psyche. What could have driven a woman, who to outward appearances seemed like an average young woman, to participate in such horrific acts? What made her not just a willing accomplice, but an active participant? Homolka was evaluated by several psychologists and psychiatrists during her trial and imprisonment. One of them, Dr. Angus MacDonald, described her as a dependent personality, suggesting that she was prone to rely excessively on others, particularly those she perceived as more powerful than herself, to meet her emotional and physical needs. This dependency, according to MacDonald, could have made her susceptible to manipulation and control by a person like Bernardo. Another psychiatrist, Dr. John Bradford, diagnosed Homolka with PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, which he believed was a result of the abuse she suffered at the hands of Bernardo. According to him, the trauma could have led to a traumatic bonding with Bernardo, where a victim forms an emotional attachment with their abuser as a survival mechanism. This does not excuse her actions, but it offers a potential explanation for why she may have felt compelled to comply with Bernardo's demands. However, not all psychiatric evaluations of Homolka agreed with this characterization. Dr. Robert Hare, an expert in psychopathy, suggested that Homolka may have exhibited traits of a psychopath herself, such as a lack of empathy, manipulative behavior, and a willingness to harm others to achieve her goals. According to Hare, Homolka's actions were not merely driven by fear or coercion, but by a desire for power, control, and pleasure. Past traumas could have also played a role in Homolka's actions. Homolka's own accounts of her upbringing suggest a deeply dysfunctional family environment, with a domineering and abusive father and a submissive mother. This background, marked by control and violence, could have normalized such behavior in Homolka's mind, making it easier for her to engage in and tolerate abusive relationships and violent acts. There is no clear consensus on what drove Homolka to participate in the heinous acts she committed. Various psychological theories suggest a combination of personality traits, past traumas, and mental health issues may have played a role in her destructive behavior. However, these explanations, while they may provide some insight into Homolka's psyche, do not absolve her of guilt or responsibility. They merely serve to illustrate the complex interplay of factors that can lead an individual down a path of such darkness and cruelty. The reverberations of the horrors perpetrated by Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo echoed long after the case had been officially closed. The impact was profound, leaving deep scars on the community and survivors, and sending shockwaves through the media landscape. The communities of Scarborough and St. Catharines, where the crimes were committed, were left grappling with the chilling reality of what had transpired within their seemingly safe and tranquil neighborhoods. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. The gruesome details that emerged from the trial led to deep-seated anxiety and suspicion, transforming the way residents interacted with each other. Parents became more protective of their children, and the sense of community was strained. The surviving victims, whose identities were carefully protected, had to live with the traumatic aftermath of their assault. The mental, emotional, and physical scars were a constant reminder of the atrocities they had endured. Some sought therapy, others turned to advocacy, channeling their pain to educate the public about sexual assault and victims' rights, giving a voice to the voiceless. The media, both national and international, played a crucial role in shaping the narrative of the Homolka-Bernardo case. Newspapers, magazines, and television networks dedicated extensive coverage to the case, providing minute-by-minute updates during the trial. This saturation coverage, while helping to keep the public informed, also had a sensationalizing effect, amplifying the horror and fear associated with the case. In the years that followed, numerous books, documentaries, and movies were produced, attempting to dissect the twisted psychology of Homolka and Bernardo and shed light on their heinous crimes. However, these attempts often courted controversy, with many accusing them of exploiting the victim's suffering for commercial gain. The case also had a significant impact on the Canadian legal system, leading to calls for reform in several areas. The plea bargain made with Homolka, in particular, sparked a nationwide debate. Many felt that her 12-year sentence was grossly inadequate given the severity of her crimes. This led to a renewed scrutiny of the plea bargain system and demands for greater transparency and accountability. The Homolka-Bernardo case also spurred changes in the way sexual assault cases were handled by the police and the courts. It highlighted the need for better training and increased sensitivity towards victims of sexual violence. In the years that followed, significant efforts were made to improve the treatment of victims throughout the legal process. The legacy of the Homolka-Bernardo case is a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity, but also of the resilience of communities, the strength of survivors, and the power of the media. It is a case that continues to resonate, prompting ongoing discussions about crime, punishment, and justice in Canadian society. Despite the passage of time and the wealth of information available, the case of Karla Homolka continues to be shrouded in enigma and controversy. Unanswered questions and lingering doubts persist, fueling alternate theories and speculation. One of the most prominent questions that resonates is the true nature of Homolka's involvement in the crimes. Was she a hapless victim under the control of a violent, manipulative partner, as she claimed in court, or was she an equal participant in the heinous acts committed? Her plea bargain, based on her portrayal as a battered woman, continues to polarize opinion, with many questioning its validity, given revelations about her active participation in the crimes. Then there's the question of her remarkable assimilation back into society. After serving her sentence, Homolka managed to build a new life for herself, complete with a new name, a husband, and children. This has led to an uneasy debate about the possibility of rehabilitation for those who commit such grave acts. Can someone who partook in such unspeakable violence truly change? And if they can, what does this mean about the nature of evil? The haunting specter of Homolka's children also raises difficult questions. Born to a woman infamous for her crimes against children, they are innocent parties caught in the shadows of a dark legacy. Their mother's past looms over them, a chilling reminder of the long reach of crimes and the innocent lives they touch. Moreover, the role of the media in the Homolka-Bernardo case remains a subject of discussion. The media's saturation coverage of the events and subsequent commodification of the horror into books, films, and documentaries raises ethical concerns. Did the media cross a line, exploiting tragedy for profit? And what impact might this have had on public perception and the pursuit of justice? Lastly, the case underscores the inherent complexities of the legal system. The plea bargain given to Homolka, while expedient at the time, generated widespread outrage and debate about the fairness of the judicial process. It highlights the tension between the pursuit of justice and the need for legal efficiency, a balance that remains delicate and contested. The Homolka-Bernardo case, in all its dark complexity, serves as a stark reminder of the myriad facets of human nature, the fallibility of systems, and the enduring impact of heinous crimes. It continues to reverberate, a chilling testament to the human capacity for evil, but also a prompt for introspection, discussion, and reform. The haunting echoes of this case are likely to linger, the unanswered questions and unresolved details a testament to its enduring grip on the public consciousness. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Serial Killers Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Serial Killers Podcast on Spotify. Subscribe now.